Welcome back, listeners. Today we are kicking off a new series titled The Notifications North Star, sponsored by our good friends at Courier. Courier is developer infrastructure for product notifications, making it easier to deliver the notification experience that your customers expect. In our series, we will be talking to customers, developers, and stakeholders within the notification space to learn about their notification strategy, how important it is, and how Courier is helping to solve this problem for product builders and developers alike. Well, today I have Eric Koslow on the Code Story podcast. Eric is the co-founder of Lattice, a popular, well-known people success platform. He also spent a lot of time at TeeSpring developing software there, and now he's the CEO and founder of a new venture, which hopefully we'll hear more about a bit today. Eric, thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Noah.
Absolutely. Before we jump into some questions I have around messaging and user communication, tell me and my audience a little bit more about you.
So I've been a technologist working in the Valley for about 10 years now. I love startups. I've worked at a few of them. I've started a couple of them at this point. I'm just a big believer of applying technology to real world problems and seeing what happens.
So you've obviously done this a few times. So you're an expert in the topic we're going to dive into then. So user communication, from your experience in the world of Lattice, what impact does user communication have, within specifically the HR SaaS space?
What's interesting about Lattice is we have a lot of recurring events, let's say. So for example, you often do a weekly one-on-one with your manager. And we also have a product called Updates, where you give a weekly update, either to your manager or to the wider team at whole. We use Courier very extensively to make sure that people are aware that these activities are happening and that they're kind of expected of you. We're a big believer of meeting people where they work. And Courier's been great because not only can we send an email, but we can also send a Slack message or a Microsoft Teams or a push notification if they have our app installed. And we didn't have to write that 4 times. We just had to, do that once. And that was pretty awesome. And that's why we seeked out Courier. And as for impact, I actually have a very good story about this, a recent story as well. 2 months ago, these weekly update tool I just mentioned was starting to have a bug where we'd start going through, especially on Fridays, which is where a lot of times everyone does their weekly updates. We were going through messaging everyone, and then timeout. And then we'd restart that whole loop. And then unfortunately, we're sometimes triple emailing people. That was not a great look. The team at the time didn't really have resources available. So they were like, how about we just shut off the notifications as we fix this? We'll give us some extra time there. Didn't think it would have a big impact. Well, notifications were off for about 3 weeks. And in those 3 weeks, we saw usage drop by almost 50%. So without telling people and reminding people that these activities, even if you've been doing this activity for almost every week for months, it just slips out of your mind. You kind of need that little nudge. And we're like, wow, these notifications are actually having a huge lift on usage of the product.
Oh, wow. That's an amazing story. And to drop 50% in usage is massive.
Yeah, especially for a tool like us where people are only logging in maybe once a week, right, to do these kind of a more passive activities. And so we only have one shot at bat. And if we miss that shot, that could be kind of really detrimental for us.
You mentioned something that piqued my interest a bit, having to write this multiple times to talk into these different channels. It makes me think around the development process, but also infrastructure. What sort of issues arose prior to Courier, that caused you to look outside for something to solve that problem?
There was once upon a time where a lot of our notifications were just emails that we'd just send people. And that worked, especially in the early days, that was fine. But then we started working with more enterprise customers. And one of those enterprise customers that we were trying to sell to was Slack. Slack itself was interested in buying Lattice. And when we showed them the platform, they were like, yeah, no, we don't use email here. We only use Slack notifications. And if you want us to use Lattice, you will have to make it so that every single one of these notifications can be sent via a Slack message. And we're like, that's a lot of work, but we'll do it. You're Slack. You're a great logo. We'd love to work with you. We'll do all that work. And we did it. And we did it ourselves. We didn't use a tool like Courier for that. And we got it out there. And it was a really cool experience and all that. And then some time passes by. And we're talking to another logo. And they said the exact same thing, except they were like, yeah, but we don't use Slack. We use Microsoft Teams. And we're like, oh, come on. Really? We're going to have to do all this again? No way. And that's when I started looking for services. And Lattice is a YC company, so is Courier. And one of the things you get with YC is access to this kind of like internal form that we call Bookface. Another founder was kind of complaining about this on the forum. And I actually saw Troy, the Courier CEO, reply saying, "Hey, we're actually building something for this right now. You should look at us." And as soon as I saw that, I sent Troy a DM being like, "Yo, we're having this exact same problem as well. Can I please look at the Courier platform?" And what you showed me is like, this is perfect. I don't want to have to ever do this again. When another customer comes to us being like, "We don't use Microsoft Teams or Slack, we just use text message." I don't want to have to rebuild all of our notification infrastructure all over again. And so, yeah, that was really a big driving force, and it saved us a ton of time. It was much easier to roll out Microsoft Teams because of Courier.
With your time with building Lattice and really a lot of your startups that you've worked with, have you experienced, in particular, preferences from your user base about how they're notified or when they're notified? Because, maybe you can notify them on Teams, Slack, email, text message, but do they prefer one over the other?
Yeah, this was actually another thing, because what's interesting, especially for something like Lattice, we have two users. We have the companies themselves, the HR admins, and then we actually have the employees themselves, which are just as valuable, if not probably more valuable for us. And each one has their own preferences. For example, Slack, the company, was like, "Hey, we don't want email notifications turned on for any of our employees." But employees themselves actually sometimes did want those email notifications because they weren't totally bought into the idea. We've had to create a pretty customized preferences panel so that the employer can say, "These are the mediums that I want my employees to be able to opt in or opt out of." And then we allow the employees themselves to say, "Yeah, I want to receive this via text," or I want to receive this via email," or "I want to receive this via text message." And we're able to route all that completely appropriately just using the Courier APIs. After they plug it in, those preferences once, it just kind of works after that.
One thing that really struck me about Courier too was the templating of messages. So you don't have to, create a ton of different templates for the same type of message. Has that been particularly useful as well?
I mean, we like to have pretty consistent branding in our emails and in our messages in general. And so that was helpful. But the other thing that was really helpful about the templating is the Courier branding. In those templates, you can actually say that this is like a brand ID and, put in, this stuff. And then we actually allow our customers to set some of those brand variables. So if they want their email headers to show up red because they're Reddit and Reddit, that they want to match the Reddit red, right, as part of their email stuff, they can actually do that. And we don't have to do any of that work to customize those emails. Courier will just kind of handle that for us if we send them, "Hey, this is the brand ID of this email going out." And so each company can also tailor their messaging so it matches their own brand style and their own internal notifications. And that's been really, really nice. I think anyone who's worked at a B2B enterprise company knows that people want to customize everything all the time. And Courier made that much, much easier for us.
So tell me about your new venture, VStream, and specifically, the topic we're talking about. How important will your communication strategy be?
VStream is a new video platform. You can kind of think of it as if YouTube and Twitch had a baby and dedicated that baby to VTubers, which is a new entertainment genre, let's say, and a new type of content creator. Communication is kind of critical here because, as you can imagine, as a content creator, I really want the ability to engage with my audiences. And when I put out content, either via live streaming or uploading a video, I want my audience to be aware that I just put something out into the world. A lot of times you will have people subscribe to your favorite content creator and then letting them know, "Hey, this person's starting a stream, jump in it," right? Or this person, has just published their newest video, come watch. And I think another thing that is important here is YouTube was built in a day where everyone just had email. But now, you talk to young folks, they don't know how to use email. They're all in Discord all day, right? For me to reach people where they're at, I need to be able to send this message via Discord, Slack, email, push notification, possibly text, for folks that are in other countries where they have less access to apps and such. And Courier kind of lets you do all of that. And I can just, the content creator's like, "Hey, I want to bring my audience." And now I have all the tools to go fetch that audience no matter where they're at.
Okay, so we talked about, preferences as far as, how they're notified and when they're notified, but still managing all of those preferences or subscription lists or anything like that can be a total nightmare if you're having to do it all yourself. Where does Courier come in in that side of the space?
So as you can imagine, VStream is very much, all about content creators reaching their audiences and bringing those folks. And, every single content creator platform has this idea of subscribing to someone, right? I want to subscribe. I want this person to show up in my subscription feed, or I want to be notified when they go live or stuff like that. And normally, as you said, like you have to track all that yourself, and you have to, iterate through that list. As I was just telling you earlier, sometimes that can time out and that can cause a lot of problems. You can start double messaging folks, and, you have to put in a lot of work there. But Courier also has this really cool feature called their lists API. So I can actually say this content creator responds to this list, right, is associated with this list over here. And then when someone subscribes to them, all I have to do is add that user ID to that content creator's list. And then when I want to send a message saying, hey, this content creator just went live, or they just uploaded a video, all I have to say is, hey, send this message to this entire list. And Courier will be the ones that will go through it, will match against everyone's preferences, make sure that the right message is being sent to the right medium, and retry if anything doesn't work and all that. And you don't have to do any of that. I just say send this message to this list, and Courier is going to take it from there. And I think that's wonderful because I don't want to have to deal with any of that.
Oh, it's huge because it's an administration nightmare that's just totally taken off your plate.
Yeah, and I think it's really embarrassing when it goes wrong too. It's not a great look when you message the same people over and over again about the same thing.
Absolutely. And what impresses me so much about Courier is that they are allowing you as the developer, as the startup founder, to focus on your product, not focus on messaging. They're consuming all of the messaging functionality and delivering something, no pun intended, in a very powerful way.
Yeah, totally.
Well, Eric, this has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I think we've really uncovered some really interesting stuff around notification strategies and how Courier is solving a lot of problems for Lattice and for VStream. So thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you.
You heard it, Code Story listeners, the importance and impact of a solid notification strategy and how important the right tool is for the job. This wraps up this episode of our Notifications North Star series, sponsored by our good friends at Courier. Check out the product at courier.com/codestory to learn more.
Business taxes. Was stressing about all the time and all the money you spent on your taxes.
This is my bill?
Now Business Taxes is a TurboTax small business expert who does your taxes for you and offers year-round advice at no additional cost, so you can keep more money in your business. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com/business. Only available with TurboTax Live full service.